Imagine a future where your success story continues to unfold, generation after generation, where your wealth becomes a catalyst for greatness, guiding your descendants to new heights. I want you to picture a world where your children and grandchildren step into their roles as custodians of your legacy, armed with the knowledge, values, and resources required to navigate the complexities of wealth. And here's the beauty of it all. Your success not only provides financial security, but also the power to create profound change in the world. It becomes a force for good, touching lives and as a visionary leader, you've built an empire, a testament to your hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. But now, a burning question keeps you awake at night. What will become of your labor when you are no longer here to guide it? Imagine a future where your success story continues to unfold, generation after generation, where your wealth becomes a catalyst for greatness, guiding your descendants to new heights. I want you to picture a world where your children and grandchildren step into their roles as custodians of your legacy, armed with the knowledge, values, and resources required to navigate the complexities of wealth. And here's the beauty of it all. Your success not only provides financial security, but also the power to create profound change in the world. It becomes a force for good, touching lives and leaving your mark on society. This is why the Meristem Family Office exists, to ensure the seamless transfer of your wealth and wisdom across generations. We empower families like yours, guiding them through the intricacies of wealth management in all its forms. As your partner, your peace becomes our driving force. Let us build a future where your family's prosperity and impact last for generations. Take the first step today, and let us begin the journey together. As a visionary leader, you've built an empire, a testament to your hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. But now, a burning question keeps you awake at night. What will become of your labor when you are no longer here to guide it? Imagine a future where your success story continues to unfold, generation after generation, where your wealth becomes a catalyst for greatness, guiding your descendants to new heights. I want you to picture a world where your children and grandchildren step into their roles as custodians of your legacy, armed with the knowledge, values, and resources required to navigate the complexities of wealth. And here's the beauty of it all. Your success not only provides financial security, but also the power to create profound change in the world. It becomes a force for good, touching lives and leaving your mark on society. This is why the Meristem Family Office exists, to ensure the seamless transfer of your wealth and wisdom across generations. We empower families like yours, guiding them through the intricacies of wealth management in all its forms. As your partner, your peace becomes our driving force. Let us build a future where your family's prosperity and impact last for generations. Take the first step today, and let us begin the journey together. As a visionary leader, you've built an empire, a testament to your hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. But now, a burning question keeps you awake at night. What will become of your labor when you are no longer here to guide it? Imagine a future where your success story continues to unfold, generation after generation, where your wealth becomes a catalyst for greatness, guiding your descendants to new heights. I want you to picture a world where your children and grandchildren step into their roles as custodians of your legacy, armed with the knowledge, values, and resources required to navigate the complexities of wealth. And here's the beauty of it all. Your success not only provides financial security, but also the power to create profound change in the world. It becomes a force for good, touching lives and leaving your mark on society. This is why the Meristem Family Office exists, to ensure the seamless transfer of your wealth and wisdom across generations. We empower families like yours, guiding them through the intricacies of wealth management in all its forms. As your partner, your peace becomes our driving.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed guests. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us at today's webinar, brought to you by the Meristem Family Office. My name is Kemi Ojenike, and I am delighted to be your host for today. At the Meristem Family Office, our goal is to help families build thriving legacies. We prioritize the peace of mind of our clients by empowering them to preserve and seamlessly transfer their complete wealth across generations. Now to the topic at hand, beyond money, real pillars of multi-generational wealth. From time to time, we hear stories of families that are torn apart by inheritance disputes. We hear about riches lost by unprepared heirs, legacies crumbling under the weight of conflict. It is such a prevalent narrative that it now makes for good entertainment. But what we don't see is the real impact of failed wealth transfers. We don't see the family bonds that have been broken, the fractured sense of identity. We don't see children whose future suddenly becomes uncertain. We don't see those who have lost their livelihoods or whose education has been terminated. The effect goes on and on. And so we must ask the question, is it really possible to preserve wealth across generations? Will building a large financial empire guarantee the future of one's family? Is it possible that accumulated wealth can do more harm than good to the family it is meant to empower? Or is there more to multi-generational wealth than just the money? These are the questions we will be addressing today with our incredible guests. We have Mr. Femi Akonde, Managing Partner at Odyssey Capital Partners. He is a seasoned expert with experience in guiding families to understand and optimize their complete wealth, both tangible and intangible. We also have Mrs. Iyobo Ini, Group Executive Director at NOSA Group. She is a next generation leader who is contributing actively to building a formidable multi-generational family business. This webinar will be a candid conversation. We will be asking our guests questions that uncover the most overlooked aspects of lasting family wealth. We will also be taking questions from you, our audience, in the course of the session. So please feel free to share your thoughts in the Q&A box. In addition, we will have a poll up on the screen that we would love for you to take part in. So please look out for that. It will comprise of just 2 simple questions to help you reflect on your wealth journey and to help us serve you better. Now, let's dive in. We'll begin with Mr. Akonde. In your experience, sir, what would you say is the most or are the most common pitfalls that families across the world usually encounter in their journey to preserve legacy across generations?
Okay, I'll break that into, it's a really good question. And I think it's a timeless question. It's a question that will keep repeating itself again and again. I'll break it into inevitable pitfalls and avoidable pitfalls. The inevitable pitfalls are things like there's going to be a growth in the size of the population of the family over time. Families grow, they expand, and this means that the number of capital events, marriages, homes to be given increase, and this has an impact on financial wealth. As the family grows, it also becomes more complex. There are different branches of the family, there are different life stages of the family, and so you have these 2 situations of complexity that is driven by the inevitability of family growth. And then, of course, you could have issues that relate to fragmented wealth where after one generation decides to break up the assets and distribute it to the children, and that of course affects the compounding of the assets over time, fragmenting them. But essentially, there is all these three factors lead to one big factor, which is the breakdown of wealth across the generations. Maybe if we bring up the slide for people to see if it's possible. So when the slide comes up, you'll be able to see that there's a creative first generation. And this is not inevitable by any means, but it is the road, I wouldn't say the road to hell, but it's the road that leads downwards, okay? And it starts with a creative first generation founder who is very energetic, who regales you with stories of how they had to walk miles when they were young, and all the stories of hardship, and they're true stories. And they work very hard, they're very creative, very dynamic. However, in many cases, they really don't have a lot of time to spend with their children. And so therefore they are time poor and financial rich. And so without good preparation, when they hand over to their children, the children basically go into stewardship mode, all right? Stewardship mode is like, we will not sell the house of our father, And so there's a lack of dynamism. Remember that these children have also grown up under the shadow of a really colossal figure. You have a father who's an SAN times 2. I mean, what are you going to say as a young lawyer? And so it can be very intimidating growing in the shadow of these large, colossal giants, so to speak. And the result of that is that usually the second generation is more akin towards a stewardship generation. He basically stewards it and makes sure it doesn't get lost. But remember, while the stewarding is going on, the time is also passing and population is also growing, complexity is also growing. And so, but it's not their fault. It's simply, that's what they've been programmed to do. And at some stage, again, this is not inevitable, but it happens a lot of the time. They say to themselves, my children will not suffer the way I've suffered. My children will have everything off. And then you find there's a car for every child, a driver for every child. The child is wearing a gold chain around his neck, has a white dog. And, they just throw stuff at the child to compensate for the life that they have not been able to live. And that generation is where the harm happens. Because that generation, which is the third generation, has great entrepreneurial ideas, but they're not particularly good at anything. All right. And so that generation does a lot of damage to the assets by doing businesses that fail, starting again, doing businesses that fail. And then by the time it gets to the fourth generation, of course, the compounding effect has been broken. And then at some stage, I always say the wealth will inevitably be recovered, but it could take a long time after it's been lost. And so that's the cycle that goes downwards. I think that as I was saying with our guest, Yobo, I was saying to her, her husband, I was saying that these models of family, behind all these errors, are two competing models of families. And one is the Western model, in which individualism, we call it the nest model, where you build a nest, you feed the children, and you launch them into orbit. So the big wedding, you basically launch them into orbit out of sight, right? For keeps, hopefully, in some cases. So basically, you have the Western model, which is very individualistic, where wealth fragments and where the objective of success is a good launch for your children. And then you have the Eastern, which by Eastern I say more Middle Eastern, Southern European, Italian, France, Portugal, and then Japan, Asia, Singapore. You have that approach where the family is a collective, and the family remains a collective. And when the family, if the family marries, I'm not saying about the men, but if the family marries, they marry assets, right? They marry assets and the team gets stronger, right? The team gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so there are two models, and I think at the heart of it is these models. Remember then that a lot of family office training has come from the West. And therefore a lot of it is trying to defend a bad situation, a broken situation. But we can avoid that situation if we get our family model right and concentrate on building wealth in every generation. I would say those are the pitfalls, and it all begins with the model of family that we pick and we elect to have.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that is such an important foundation that we've laid. The fact that whether we know it or not, our families are probably following a certain model.
That's right.
And these things happen over time.
Yes.
One thing I found and one thing I've realized is whether you know it or not, you are playing out a script.
Oh, yes.
And our goal is to ensure that you are deliberate about that
Yes.
script so that you
Yes.
get the outcomes that you really desire. And speaking of outcomes and reality, we have Iyobo here with us, who is in the journey, in the process of building in her own family. And so she has a lot of practical experience that she'll share with us today. And so we want to start out by asking about your experience. You're a leader in the family business. What was that like in terms of the transition from the founder to having the next generation be a part of building what had been established? And how were you able to do that while not impacting the unity of the family?
Thank you very much. I think that's a fantastic question. So my dad, right from time, has always been very intentional. We spoke about this
Yes.
earlier as well.
Yes.
He's always been very intentional about his communication. So from when I was in primary school to maybe about age 15, he would always say, my wealth is not yours, work for your wealth. You have to be independent. But by the time I was 16, when we moved out of country and he was no longer with us, it turned into a different conversation. I have built something in Nigeria. I would like for you to finish your education and come back. There's work to be done. So from the age of 15, 16 up until about 25, this is the conversation that I was having with my dad. And I don't know if he did it intentionally or if he had, but my dad is an avid reader. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that, he had learned over time. That's why it's also important to also educate yourself about what's going on in other climes so that you can sort of fashion your family and your approach according to what you want it to be. So he had sort of told us, this is what I need from you. This is what I would like. If you don't communicate your hopes and your dreams, it's going to be impossible for the people that are around you to ensure that those hopes and dreams stand the test of time. So aside that, planning is very important. What he did was get an external person to come in and look at the family structure, look at the business structure, and give us ideas on how we could integrate both, how we could sort of structure the family in a way that we would be able to continue the business even after he wasn't here. So he has always communicated with us. He has always told us stories. He has walked 100 miles, So those are the stories that kind of carried through with us and made sure that the bonds of the family were built beyond finance.
Right.
It was more of, I have a responsibility. I have a commitment. I have something I'm coming back to do. So I think that really was what, prepared us for the changes with leadership.
Brilliant.
I should come to you as a case study, a positive case study.
Absolutely, because
Absolutely.
I'm hearing intentionality.
Yes.
A lot of intentionality.
Yes.
There are just certain things you cannot leave to chance.
Yes.
Particularly because it's easy to focus on building assets and being intentional about that alone. But it takes a certain understanding and a certain deliberateness to know that this will not manage itself. I need to create a core, a foundation for it. I need to prepare those that will be a part of this. And I start early on. So imagine how different it would have been if he just had the conversation with you now. It would have been, okay, I'm already living my life. Boy, where is all of this coming from? But that intentionality, communication, constant communication is what we're hearing. The stories, I'm sure we'll still get to that. But let me not jump the gun because you can tell how excited I am already about this conversation. So let us go to Mr. Akonde one more time. We're talking about intangible assets. Anyone that has been on this webinar has heard that before. For the benefit of those that may not really know what that is and how to deal with that, I would ask, what are intangible assets? And how can you identify your family's intangible assets so that you can be deliberate about managing and growing it?
I think that's great. And we'll see when the slide comes up that intangible assets actually have a very, very great impact on the bottom line, which is in the finances. So intangible assets, human capital, intellectual capital, and values capital. Human capital is the well-being of the family, the well-being of the individual, and the education and skills of the individual child. Intellectual capital is the handed down collective wisdom of the family, handed down in processes. This is how the family business operates. This is how we do this. This is how we deal with this problem. And these are kind of codified or transferred by word of mouth, and they're transferred from generation to generation. That means that families don't have to start again. They don't have to always learn for themselves. They can build on accumulated knowledge that's coming from their history. And so there is a Rothschild way of doing business. There's a Rothschild way of doing transactions. There are transactions that the Rothschild will do. There are transactions that they will not do. And then finally, values. Values are, spiritual beliefs, ethical beliefs of the family, and these are embedded in its history. These three intangibles, I call them multidimensional wealth. This multidimensional wealth, they all have different things they do. Financial capital, as we know, will meet the needs of the family, and will also provide fund money later on in order to take advantage of opportunities and things like that. Human capital helps the family to grow the business, helps the family to develop the business and whatever it's doing. Intellectual capital allows the family to pivot because you have this collective wisdom, you have money, and therefore in situations where markets turn against you, you are able to pivot and to change tack. Because on the long road of wealth, there will be many pivots that need to happen from this business to this business.
Right.
There's a family in the UK, I forget their name now, but they were a textile family and they were doing very well. They were so old that they did the uniforms for the British Army in World War I.
Wow.
Right, that's how old they were. And they did uniforms for the guards and Buckingham Palace, and they had a rich history. But at the end of the day, Asian textiles were becoming cheaper and they were facing competition from Asia. They couldn't really cope. And at the end of the day, they converted their textile mills into an entrepreneurial park. They said, we used to make clothes, now we make futures.
Interesting.
Now we make futures. And they combined into an entrepreneurial park with accommodation. I mean, it's a massive thing, with accommodation and so on, and began another phase in the family's prosperity. But that's a pivot that is based on intellectual capital. Values capital is what holds the family together. Now, if we are able to get the chart up, I will show you the value of intangible capital to finances. I've simulated, is it up now? Awesome. I've simulated two families. Family A that has very high capital and very low intangible capital. And family B that has much lower, they have just 10% of the other family, but they have very high capital. So family A starts out with $10,750,000. Let's call it dollars, makes it better. And then family B starts off with just $1,120,000. That's rich by Nigerian standards, but by virtue of the very, very rich, probably not very rich. Anyway, the end capitalization, the end capital, I think it's gone off now. The end capital is about 104 million for family A. But for family B, it is 5.3 billion. 5.3 billion. What has happened is if you look at the end of the column, you will see that the effect of intangibles on family A is only 48.3%. Whereas the effect of intangibles on family B, because it's high, is 76.85. Now, when you look at that line, you see that family A still has an advantage in the first generation. But as we get to the second generation, family B begins to catch up. And then you see the exponential curve going up.
Right.
Now, family B's situation is worse than it looks because they're still going to face the inevitable capital calls within the family. They're still going to face certain erosions of capital here and there. And so and the population is going to grow. Complexity is going to grow. And so what you see as a straight linear line there is going to dip.
Right.
Whereas if you look at family B, they will face the same thing, but they have more headroom. They have more headroom to make the adjustments to pivot. And so what intangible capital does, it buys you opportunity.
Right.
It buys you the opportunity to enter new markets. It buys you the opportunity to pivot. And because the value system is strong, it keeps a base, it reinforces the base. The company is not going to go and do, what's the name of that thing that people used to do? MMM. So what's that money?
MMM, yeah.
MMM. They're not going to put all their money into MMM because they have certain values, So that's the power of intangible. It's actually, if you look at, on a country basis, let's look at a country like Japan, and let's look at a country like Nigeria, for instance. Japan has no minerals, but it has high intangible capital. And it's been able to leverage that intangible capital to produce a certain level of wealth. Same thing for Singapore. And you have countries like Nigeria. Nigeria is not the worst case. Congo. Everything is in Congo. They have every mineral. And you look at it, because intangible capital is not well respected. It's not legislated for. In terms of patents and copyrights and defense of intellectual property, is not defense. You don't have a trusted system. And so in a high friction environment, people need to be able to trust the transaction. The cost of doing transactions in a Congo is higher than the cost of doing transactions in Singapore. All right? And that's what happens even within a family. The cost of doing business and the friction is too high. And so the family is eroding capital within and without. And so intangible capital is an absolute must. For me, if a family office cannot manage intangible capital, it can't manage your wealth. There's a case for that. Sorry, I'm running a little bit. There's a case for that, and there's the Medici family. They're my favorite family. By the way, they don't exist anymore, but they do. The Medici family is a 13th century family. They started as cotton traders in Italy, in Tuscany, in Florence, and they became very rich, and they moved into banking. They sponsored Galileo, Michelangelo, and most of the Italian painters. They basically sponsored them. And they also invented the checkbook and double entry for accounting. Okay, so this is a massive company. Yeah. So for 300 years, they ruled Tuscany, for 300 years. In the end, they were left with no heirs because because of that family, they changed it and allowed females to inherit. And so their last two heirs were females. But Anna Luisa, the last one, was very headstrong. So she didn't even get married. And so the family kind of ended with her. And then in 1737, she willed over everything the family had to the government of Florence. Now, you would think that their wealth disappeared, but it didn't, because the Medici family are credited as being the fathers of European Renaissance art. And everybody goes to Florence who wants to see good art. If you put together what they actually gave the Italian government, it would be in billions and billions of dollars. And they gave rise to other people like Ferragamo. Right. Ferragamo was also from Florence, Salvatore Ferragamo, and they gave rise to a whole industry of art. And so you have a family that started off as a trading family, became a banking family, and then finally became a philosophy. Right. And when a family becomes a philosophy, it never dies. Wow. Contrast that with the Vanderbilts. You know the story. Right? Vanderbilts they're the case study of a family that is worth the equivalent of the U.S. Treasury within a couple of generations. They've divided everything amongst themselves. They're trying to meet up with the Astors and the other big families of the time, and they frittered everything away.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there's nothing that you take away from this webinar, it must be that from today, you must begin to pay attention to your intangible assets, because they make all the difference. It's like air. The things that you cannot see, the things that you cannot hold by hand are the most important, right? And so when we fall into that trap, and it's a common trap, really, it's a human trap of focusing on money because you can see, it's tangible, you can use it as a measure. But when you do that, it's such a flawed approach. Yeah. It's such a dangerous approach. And we've seen, even from the statistics that you have provided, the stories and the simulations, almost scientific, to show that focusing on financial assets alone will not get you long-term success.
because the financial assets were not created with
They were
money.
not created
They were
with
created
money.
with human and intellectual capital.
Absolutely.
So you basically need to keep that engine running.
Brilliant, brilliant, awesome. So let's dive into Iyobo's real life experiences once more. How would you say, in your case, and I feel like you've already set a really good foundation, but how did values and family traditions and certain practices within your family, how would you say, looking back now, perhaps at the moment you didn't know, but when you look back, you see that these things that seem small and maybe you didn't even understand at the time have made such a difference in the journey, and they've even impacted the success of your business?
Well, I say my family is very faith based. So those are part of the intangible assets that you say are necessary.
Absolutely.
You know, so in everything we do, it's even been transferred into the business. When we start, we must say a prayer.
Right.
So what my mom always says, when you look at the Bible, a lot of plans, a lot of lessons for how you should do things in there. So there's no lesson that you will not take from there. So when it comes to things like education, it's very important. When it comes to things like continuing education, it's very important. And even for the grandchildren, it's something that we try to do consistently, continue educating them. We educate them on wealth management, we educate them on the business, we take them on trips so that we make sure that the foundation that we have set, the children that are coming after us, even our generation, we are able to build on it. And we know that what we're doing is not just for us, it's for the generation that we don't see. We are building for them. So it gives us more conviction to do what it is that we are doing today. So that's his question.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can hear the importance of, first of all, building the sense of identity. And that comes from your beliefs, right? So contrary to what sometimes we think, you don't quite leave belief to chance. Many people think everyone will figure out their own way. And that might be true, but within a family system that is building for the long term, as much as possible, you want to be able to influence the belief system of members in the right direction, in the tried and tested direction. You want them to know before they are able to make independent choices that there's a certain path that our family has taken that has worked for us, and this is what we subscribe to. Hopefully, as you grow older, you will find the deeper truths in this, but that belief system is critical. And then education, building the human capital and the intellectual capital, right? Building the ability of family members to create, to even know how did we create this wealth in the first place. That fatal error that many make, where they exclude their children until the last minute. You wait until they are 25, like we often speak about, and then you call them into an office with a lawyer they've never met. And you say, oh, by the way, now is the time for you to take over. And the child is like, take over what? What is all of this about? We've seen that is not, it's not an effective way. There's no preparation. You must be deliberate about the preparation before the pressure mounts. Awesome. Now,
Can I just add something?
please go ahead.
In every step of what my dad did, he integrated us into the system. When we're planning the family office, we were there in the meeting. It wasn't just talking to him. So we all had input into the structure. It wasn't a, this is what I'm doing. Come and sit next to the lawyer.
Exactly.
We sat with the lawyers. We drafted the agreement. We drafted the constitution.
Brilliant.
We sat with the staff at the head office. We come up with strategy. We talk about what it is that we're going to do. So I think that's a very, very key thing.
Absolutely.
That
Brilliant.
needs to be
That
done.
the whole family needs to own it.
Yes. Really good. Awesome. Now, Mr. Kode, usually when we speak of governance, and Iwo had spoken about that a bit when she spoke about the constitution and all of that, people would usually think of public governance. We don't quite realize that as a family unit, there's a governance system that is at play. Whether we are deliberate about it or not, there's a way that we are running our affairs. That's our governance system. So my question is this: how will a deliberate governance structure help to prevent the erosion of family wealth?
Okay, on a straight basis, I mean, what a governance system does is it tries to isolate the risks within the family from the risks within the business by professionalizing the business and turning the family into an institution. And so by doing that, there's an overlap, of course, within, and it tries to manage the overlap, that point at which the family, with its human emotions and so on, interacts with this professional entity. It tries to manage that because friction is something that is that can happen to the best of families. Was it Rupert Murdoch, owner of Fox? They have a problem. They have a problem with their trust. Their trust has been challenged in court very recently, and the father tried to change the trust, but it's an irrevocable trust. He was held; he couldn't change it, even though he was the settlor, because he's now discovered there's a particular son that he thinks should be the one, and it's too late to do that. So family governance is a means of governing the relationship between the family and the business, and between the family members and themselves, between the current generation and the next generation. And so it's managing all these relationships in an explicit way. In the first generation, where trust levels are very high, husband and wife and their children, some of these communications can be married in implicitly, such as you go out and somebody asks you, do you want this? And your mother just looks at you and you know that you're supposed to say no. Those are implicit communications.
Right.
But you can't live by those forever. And so you need to turn those implicit communications into explicit communications that allow the family to manage these relationships with itself, with the business, and with the future. Also with its history, because the history of a family is really important. I come from Ekiti, as we know, and I'm kind of small envious of her because she comes from Benin, which is a big empire, and all we did was fight wars and fight everybody that was trying to attack us. But history is as important, and so in Yobo's case, she can point to a rich history of civilization and say, this civilization at its apex was greater than certain countries in Europe, and that helps the children, many of whom have been educated abroad, to understand that there is a system by which the system they should submit to. So I think that family governance is great, manages the history, manages the future, manages the relationship with the business and the relationship with one another. Without that explicit system, complexity will damage the family because different life stages, different causes, different relationships, different dreams, the family will fracture.
Right.
And sometimes this is not known until after the settlor passes away. And in many cases, it happens to people that we believe it shouldn't happen to, well-informed, well-educated people. And one of the reasons that governance is not done as the way it should be done is usually due to overconfidence by the founding generation. Every creator makes money because they're confident.
Right.
But there needs to be an understanding that there are certain vagaries in the future that you cannot be confident about. There are certain threats over the horizon that you need to provide for beyond your generation. And that's why it's absolutely key for a family of means and even a family of aspiring means to begin to put down governance today.
Brilliant. So we're hearing the need for structure, very deliberate structure within the family. We're hearing that it's not limited to families of means alone, even though you might think the risk is a bit higher because there are many triggers to conflict. But even in the process of building, a structure is what guides you and ensures that you're not leaving anything to chance. Yes. Because like you said, as you grow up, there are certain nuances that that guide your behavior. But after a while, they are not strong enough because people are getting more independent. Yes. Exposure is increasing. Yes. Family governance, particularly the one that is jointly and deliberately built, is one that sort of helps to define what our code of behavior is, yes. Our agreed code of behavior, yes. What is expected of us, and what guides our decisions. So that's extremely critical. Now, Yobo, in your journey, would you say mentorship has played a role in preparing you and perhaps your siblings for the future, for leadership of a family business? And what form would you say it has taken? Was anything formal done, or was it more from observation implied? How has that played a role in your journey?
I think for me, mentorship has, for my family, mentorship is a really big thing, because even till today, although my dad is not actively in the family business, he's still, what I always call it, he's still walking with us through the journey.
Right.
So if I have any questions, if there are any places, any gaps that need to be filled, he is there to provide the information. So it's more than mentorship, it's role modeling.
Right.
I worked with him before he retired. So I see how he managed the business. I see how he managed individuals. I see how he even managed interactions between individuals and his children. So my hope is that, I will also learn that and be able to, do that for my kids in the future when they come into the business. And I say when, because that's the plan by the grace of God.
Amen to that.
So like I said, for me, mentorship is more than just mentorship. It's role modeling. It's my parents are cheerleaders. So when we do something good, they are there for you. Oh, excellent. Also, even when your decisions don't particularly work out the way you would have liked, they don't chastise, they don't beat you down or berate. It was a decision, it was made at the time, they encourage you to keep striving and keep pushing forward. So it's a supportive environment. There's trust, there's communication, and that's part of mentorship, irrespective of whether the mentor is your parent or not, or a relative, and because they know you, the way they communicate with me is a different way they communicate with one of my younger siblings or my older sibling, so they understand each of us, and they have a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information that we can draw from. So they are working with us, and because I have worked with them, when they are not here, I already know what needs to be done.
Brilliant.
We go back to the family constitution. We were there when it was drafted. So I don't even have to refer to the book. I was there. I know what should be done. And the hope is that I can also pass that information to my children formally and informally, because we have meetings, we have extensive communication sessions. It can be one-on-one. We can have 15-minute calls. This is what is going on in the business. This is what we're trying to do. What do you think? And then that's put into play. But it's by consensus, it's by agreement. So I think those are the things that we do. But mentorship, especially in a family business, especially in a family structure, if you want it to be done a certain way, it needs to exist. And I'm lucky, me and my siblings, we're actually lucky because we've gotten the opportunity to work with the founders. So it's honestly, it's one of the things I always tell my dad. I say the fact that I get to work with you is one of the biggest joys of my life. Right. He has built something fantastic. And sometimes I have to sit back and go, wow, okay, this is what has been handed to me. So what am I going to do to make sure that this legacy is there for my children and the next generation?
Yeah. And I think that, your father also, what's happened in your family is also really like something that families need to think about, because a lot of founders leave too late. And really, if you look at a relay race, the person that is supposed to receive the baton is already running. So at the stage they're running together.
So true.
And I think that that's something. It's not like, oh, I'm going to retire I'm retiring today, come today, and I haven't been able to work alongside you and learn from you.
Fantastic. That is so profound and so encouraging to see. And it brings to mind the reality that more often than not, when you're speaking about succession, you're speaking about handing over to the next generation, there is commonly a fear among founders of losing control.
Yes.
Almost like that feeling, mostly unspoken, but sort of guides action, where you think very soon I will no longer be relevant in this business. And that cannot be further from the truth, because you're not necessarily leaving. Your role is just changing. You're going from being an active founder, an active executive, to a cheerleader, like you said, to a coach, to a guide, the sort of guidance that would be invaluable to the children. And so when that transition and when that structure is not put in place in time, the next generation is deprived of that.
right.
The founding generation is deprived of seeing their
Yes.
children blossom and the joy that, because
Yes.
I can't even imagine how proud your dad
Yeah.
must be, where he can see it in his
Yes.
lifetime. They're running what I've built and I'm able to still contribute to it.
Yes.
That is something that more founders need to experience. And it starts with letting go of the fear
Yes.
that, oh, I'm going to lose relevance by not being a part of this anymore. So thank you so much for that. Awesome. We're making good progress. I would just like to mention, if you have any questions, please be sure to leave them in the chat box. We would look forward to taking them. Awesome. Now, Mr. Akonde, we understand that wealth can be a very tricky thing, particularly for the next generation. You spoke a bit about how certain people feel like they can answer questions with money. So you sort of throw money at children, throw money at the problem, and the result is usually not very pleasant. So here's my question. How can a family ensure that their wealth is a tool for building growth and resilience, the right values within their heirs?
Okay, that's a very difficult question. Yeah, I think that here I'm going to be a little bit contrarian, and I'm going to balance it. I think that there is no doubt that what we're seeing, the trends we're seeing in Europe and in America, they used to talk about the meritocracy. Now they're talking about the inheritocracy. And we find out that children who have been given certain advantages continue to have advantages. Right. And this is something that we're going to continue seeing. And so in terms of building a child's future, it's not about replicating your sufferings exactly and saying that the child must take bus and the child must go to CMS. And if the child doesn't go to Oshodi, it's not about replicating, because that was a different time and a different age. Contrarily, one of the things you need to do is there needs to be a project that is worth buying into. If the project doesn't have the excitement and the meaningfulness that a child can buy into, then it's likely it will be resisted. Then you need to stack the deck in favor of the child, right? There's a cost to this thing. You can't bring your child from abroad and you tell the child, and the child will be taking Uber about. You have to stack the deck. So there's certain levels of resourcing that have to come into play. A child must have a house. Yes, he must have a house. He must have a car. He must have meaningful work. Not just work that is sitting in the reception, meaningful work, and he must have healthcare. These are the basics. And when those basics are in place, we are now empowered to throw a challenge. You cannot throw a challenge without stacking the deck. All right? You're setting any work that is impossible. It's like telling these prisoners that go and break stones in the quarry. It's meaningless work. It breaks the spirit. It's just like we'll never finish. Look how big this mountain is, and we have to break it into little pieces. It's meaningless. It's supposed to break your spirit, and you don't want to do that. So you have to equip and you have to challenge. And then, of course, in the distribution, trust distribution, in many families, trust distribution is just they take the profits, they divide it by the number of people, and they give it to them. Trust distribution ideally should be in a U shape. Very high when you are young and being educated, flattening to the bottom of the U when you are at your most productive years, and rising again as you become older and you now need help. And so at the people who are at the base are not taking as much out of the family in terms of money, even though they have a base already, in terms of their housing, healthcare, and so on. And at that moment, the trust is able to replenish itself and prepare for other people. So a U-shaped distribution system, and then clear milestones for family members. You get your degree, this is what happens. In fact, let's not start from degree. You read, I'm trying to construct one for a book, actually. I don't know any Benin authors. But okay, you will go to the Museum of Modern Art or whatever it is. When you are 10, you get this. Write an essay on the Benin Kingdom. you get this. You know, you basically have to build these things, these reward systems from very young on. Read our authors, read about our culture, know who we are as a family gets you something. Go to university gets you something. Be able to show appreciable level of savings get you something. These are maturity-based distributions. So you have the U-shaped distribution, you have the maturity-shaped distribution, and you also need to stack the deck.
Right.
That's the balance. If you don't stack the deck, it's too hard.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So balance. First of all, balance is key.
Balance.
You need to equip and then you throw a challenge, right? So sometimes we're overweight one side.
Yes.
So either we are giving everything or we are taking an extreme position saying they will take nothing, they will get no benefit
It
from
only works
this.
if you suffer.
Yes. So they are both extreme positions. And we're saying for this to really work, there has to be a balance. And then you want to incentivize the right conduct.
Yes.
So you want to reward certain types of behavior. You want to show that if I do this, I get this. But your hope is that in the process of you doing those things, you are building a certain type of character that will stay with you. So that very soon, it's more than the incentive.
That's right.
It's you having become a certain type of person that can deal with the responsibility of
You
wealth.
want them to enjoy success.
Right.
And that translates into the business. You enjoy getting those results. You enjoy meeting those targets, setting those projects and seeing them successful. But it all starts from the ice cream.
Absolutely. Awesome. Now, some people are probably on this call and thinking, Yobo is in this family business. Does she have any personal dreams, any personal goals? Is she still able to even manage that? So the question is, how did you balance your own personal, professional growth, your own dreams with running the family business?
So I would first of all like to say balance does not come naturally to me. I am when I'm giving something and it's for me, the family is so important. It takes up my whole consciousness.
Right.
It takes up my whole vision. But I think my husband was able to be like, we have to, draw the line.
Right.
It cannot be so. I've had people around me who have helped me find balance. Sometimes it's my mom. Most times it has been my husband. So the spouse you marry, especially when you're in a family business, when you're in a family institution, is extremely important. So what I have done, because I am also an executive in the family business, my professional growth is sort of crafted into my yearly plan. So I sit with my GMD, I have a discussion with him, these are your KPIs, this is what it is you're supposed to do. So I've been to numerous trainings, especially at LBS, which gives you local information. You get to meet people, you get to network with people. So that has helped me a lot when it comes to professional growth and balancing professional growth and my personal goals. My personally, because I have my professional taken care of in line of the business, personally, I try to do a lot of things that bring me joy.
Right.
So I listen to podcasts, I travel a lot, I eat a lot. I eat a lot, I work out, I spend time with people that bring me joy, and going back to networking, I keep a lot of people around me who add to my life, so it's not only professional, it's also personal, and it's also, I learned this as well from my husband. When you go out to network with people, don't go with the intention of getting something out of the relationship.
Right.
How, build a relationship that transcends exchange of gain. Eventually, as long as the person is also a sensible person and you chose the right person, you will gain something from them eventually. So for me, personally, the network that I have is actually part of my net worth.
Right.
So, I really don't like the word networking, but I hope I explained it.
No, that was
so
really good.
Build concrete relationships with people outside of your professional business, and it will definitely translate into your professional.
Fantastic. Again, I hear a lot of deliberateness. I hear a lot of don't just go with the wave. Like spend your time in the things that matter, right? Give your energy to the things that give you joy. You don't need to be overwhelmed by this one thing. It's a part of your life. And there are other parts as well that you should tend as a person so that you can give the best to that side of your life as well. Awesome. We'll go to, we have one or two questions, I believe, that we'll visit as we go along, but let's run through some of the ones that we are nearing the end of the webinar. So again, if you have any questions, please be sure to bring them forward. All right, Mr. Konde. For those families that, and again, this is slightly off script, because I'm thinking there are probably some that are listening to us and are thinking, these things that you guys are saying is fantastic. I wish I had heard this earlier, but I didn't know all of this. And now I am in a situation where the second generation, my children, are not interested in what I have built. The relationship is not even that good. Our communication is quite poor, and I have all these regrets. What can I possibly do? Is there still any hope for me to salvage this situation?
So I think 70% of the time, those are sometimes the kind of clients, situations in which I'm brought into. And so sometimes it can be very difficult for parents to see that situation. I think that the first thing is to make sure that the assets are preserved. And so if children are not willing to come on the business or are unable to come because they don't have the right skill sets, you're going to have to professionalize the business. But what I would do is what we discussed before, is that I would make my foundation the major shareholder. My foundation would be values-led. My children would have to attend foundation meetings. And the hope is that as they attend those foundation meetings, they're separate from the business. The business is professionally run. The values of the foundation will go into the business. And as the children listen to it, as their children listen to it, there is hope of salvaging the future. That is the way I would do it if I had to do it.
Awesome. And so there's still hope. There's still structures that can be created that can help to move things in the right direction. Awesome. I think perhaps our last question for Yogo, I would say, dealing with generational differences. So the generation of our parents and then this next gen who have a different view, a different way of doing things, right? And also understanding that the generation ahead will be different. The children that are coming, the grandchildren will be different. So in your experience, how have you encountered any friction across generations, and how have you navigated that in your family?
I think in any family, in any business, friction, conflict, because personalities are different and hopes and dreams are different, is almost inevitable. But I think what has helped us manage it is most of us are extremely emotionally intelligent.
Right.
And those of us who are not have sort of had to learn because the value system of the family is, we don't fight. And if you fight to survive so you can see another day. So it's not a situation of where you're trying to tear each other down to the end and it doesn't matter. It does matter. I work with my siblings. I see my parents at least once a week. So it's important for us to keep that relationship as strong as possible. Even in the family constitution, there are ways that conflicts are managed. My mom's a pastor, she's a counselor. And when it comes to conflict management, she may not always get it right, but over time, with interacting with us and us also giving her feedback, because that communication thing, if, for example, I couldn't tell my mom, mommy, this thing you did, it was somehow, and my parents are open to learning.
Right.
So the parents that I had 15 years ago, totally different human beings today, because communication between us has been a two-way street. It's never been, I'm your elder, don't say this to me. But also I have to know how I'm going to say things to them.
Of course.
So it has also helped us manage the conflict between individuals. But I think the important thing is emotional intelligence. Because I can't talk to somebody a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that I should. because there is tomorrow, and that person will remember that hurt. So I think emotional intelligence has been key to managing conflict. It will come up. We're saying all these things and it sounds all rosy and like it's an easy thing to do. But to be very frank, it's not easy. There has to be commitment from the parents.
Absolutely.
There has to be commitment from the children. And then the next generation, you have to build that commitment into them, the resilience into them, because I'm dealing with 3 siblings. We're actually 4, 3 siblings and 2 parents. My daughter is dealing with maybe 8 or 9 cousins.
Yes.
She's dealing with uncles and aunts. She's dealing with her grandparents on this side. So it becomes more complex and more complicated. So it's not easy. It takes time. And it's something that you will probably do for continuously, it never ends.
Right.
So it's just to keep at it and to ensure that, the value system is there. Tomorrow is what we're fighting for. It's not today.
Fantastic. Awesome.
So great.
Love it. Okay, so we'll take a few questions and then we'll take some last words or parting comments from our guests and then we'll call it a day. All right, so someone is asking, we've had someone answer this, but I'll raise it for the benefit of our guests. In the 2nd or 3rd generation, how can one make the financial management of the business flow without issues? Most especially, who will be in control of the company's accounts? In the 2nd or 3rd generation, how can one make the financial management of the business flow seamlessly? Who would be in control of the company's accounts? Maybe we want to.
Well, I mean, currently in the business, I'm actually the head of treasury and asset management.
Okay.
So I am trained as a finance manager. I worked in ARM, so I have a background in wealth management. It doesn't necessarily have to be the child. When you bring people into the business, whether it's your child or whether it's a professional, it has to be on a merit basis. You're not going to give your business to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or who doesn't have experience. So it's important to build that into your business. It's a merit-based system. If you have children, you would like them to be in the family business, but they don't qualify for a position, please don't fit a round peg in a square box. Put them where they're supposed to be. There should be a clarification between ownership and management.
Right.
Because you're an owner doesn't mean you can manage. And because you are a manager doesn't necessarily mean you will be an owner. But the hope is that your managers become and think like owners, so that they can actually move the business to the next level and drive that vision. So it's really not about pegging somebody. You are the one that will manage the finance. Make sure that the person that is going to sit in any role understands what it is that it takes to do that position in the business. And I think, that would adequately address that.
Thank you so much. Ooh, we have some interesting comments here. Okay, maybe I'll leave this for last because it's quite a narration. Okay, let me go to the next one. In the family, if both the mother's family has a family business and father's family have a family business, so how do you get the children balanced? So there's a family business on the mother's side and on the father's side. Where will the children, what do we do?
Actually, I haven't come across that. But, I would imagine that, I would imagine that, you would, I don't think there's a conflict really. I don't think there's a conflict because when you think about it, even within marriage, when you marry into a family of means, the husband or the wife is doing their own business, maybe another business, and the child is doing their own business. I think it all depends on relationship. Overall, there still needs to be a coming together of the entire family. There need to be annual retreats, annual vision sessions, annual sharings. And you may find out that those two businesses grow increasingly connected over time by virtue of the connection at a relational level as well. So I would say it's not either this or that, it's both, with making sure that the big tent is still over the family members.
Absolutely, so good.
I'll just give you a real life example of that. My dad, manufacturing, my mom, ran a supermarket. So at the time where we stopped the business, she had 3 branches, and I worked with her in the beginning. So there was never a separation of the business. What happened was we created a portfolio of companies. So you have business units. There's the retail arm, which took care of the supermarket purchasing and all that. There's the manufacturing arm, which took care of the oil palm and the cassava business that we're into. At the end of the day, like you said, when there's a retreat, we are all in the bucket. So I was with her, my brothers were with my dad. So, and it wasn't that, oh, the girl, go and work with the girl, the boy. At the point where because I had decided to leave paid employment, so to speak. So I was leaving paid employment. I didn't have anything to do at that point. I was taking my time to figure out what my next step was. And she came, oh, my manager has been stealing from me. Oh, I'm not doing anything right now. Would you like for me to? And that was how I started in the family business. So it should be a bucket.
Absolutely.
You get married, everybody puts it into a bucket, and how are we going to manage it as a collective?
Fantastic. So I hear structuring, I hear alignment, because at the end of the day, we may be different, but we should be working towards the same collective. And also is the fact that that thought that children must be in the business does not necessarily have to be the case, at least not at every point in time. Like Iyobo said, the children may be managers and owners. They may be owners and not be managers. Ultimately, the goal is to ensure the continuity of the business and to have the children participate in the ways that they are most able, not just because they are children, but because they can learn, they can add value, because there are many different ways that they can participate. Now, before we go...
I just want to add to that. I think that just our mental frame is to also embrace an Eastern perspective, that the family is the first business. And then that business does other businesses.
Fantastic.
I think that's without the family.
Brilliant. The family is the first business. That's so good. So we're going to put up a poll now for our online audience. Please, just 2 questions, like I said before. Please fill out the poll. Let us hear your thoughts as we go through the rest of the questions. All right. Okay. What if it is a situation that the best person to take over the business from the founder is not the favorite son or not the most likable person by the father? What happens if the most qualified is not the favorite?
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe your work will speak to it as well, but I think that where metrics have already been drawn down concerning the jobs, if this hasn't been done, then it becomes a question of intuition and favoritism and so on. But if the metrics have been drawn down and there is a process within the business that each person needs to pass through, then I think that merit will find its way. Sometimes, though, a brilliant person may not necessarily be the best to hold an enterprise together. Sometimes you want to make sure that the person has a wide-angled lens, that even though they are working on a particular function, they still have a big picture of the business that embraces all the other units as well. So I think that there should be metrics for appointing successors, appointing people into positions, and there should be a process of appointing them. I think the days of gender are over. I think that the days of first child, primogenitor are over. But having said that, I always respect families, cultures, but I think that there needs to be a system. And once that system is in place, it becomes relatively easy to pick a successor.
Fantastic. A system is critical. Decisions should not be based on who we like or who is most able to do the work within the right structure. Okay, we have a few questions here that I will put together. So one person is asking about the requirements, the net worth requirements for those who want to start a family office. Another person is asking for firms that you work with to set up your family office. Another person is asking about strategies that we would recommend for creating a sustainable family wealth plan that balances immediate needs and long-term growth, generational legacy. And so to just answer all of that together, the Meristem Family Office, the hosts of this webinar, are quite well positioned to support you on this journey. As a matter of fact, at the end of this call, we're going to be putting up a link if you would like to have a consultation where we sort of review your current family dynamics and we recommend what you should do. So typically, the family office typically would be structured to help families of means. However, if you are, because we strongly believe that you do not wait until you have reached your financial goals before you begin to plan for the future. And so you may or may not have gotten to whatever level that you're aspiring to, but you still want to put structures in place. Please feel free to talk to us. We would advise on the sort of structures you need to be thinking about, the sort of wealth plan that you need to have so that you can set your family on the right path. The end of the year is a great time to do this because this is a time where families typically come together. So there are some critical conversations that you should be having at this time, and we will guide you through that process. Now, this will be my final question because it's quite a narration. And so this person says, my father founded and has been running a healthcare company for nearly 20 years now. I worked with him for 7 years, left the company in 2021 because I was not growing professionally. It's been 3 years now. I have found fulfillment and satisfaction professionally. My brother took over from me and now he is exhausted. Oh, sorry, I think something happened. I have lost the question. Sorry, okay. And now he is exhausted and plans to leave too. I am torn. I feel compelled to return to the business, to turn the business around and build it into a generational asset. But the memories of the stress and frustrations I faced years back, the stress I put my wife through as well, flood back and it dissuades me. I don't know how to start or where to start from. My father also seems more likely to transfer leadership now. What should this individual do? I mean, it's a bit complex, and I'm sure we cannot deal with all of these matters at this scope, but it would be great to just hear some high-level thoughts on how they can think about it. So in summary, was in the family business previously, left because they felt like they were not growing. And sometimes we have that. We have cases where children are in the business, but they feel like they are sort of stuck in a spot. Perhaps there is not a good enough structure for their own growth, And so this person left, but his brother, I think he's male, his brother was in there and now wants to leave. And he feels torn because he wants to come in, be part of the business, but does not want to go back to that stress and the discomfort and, just the toll that it took on him at the time. So what would we recommend that this individual do?
Okay.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one, yeah. I don't know. I think myself and you will probably look at it from two angles. I'll look at it probably from a more theoretical angle, and maybe you look at it from a practical angle. But for me, if you bear in mind that the family is the first business, you also have to be very careful in terms of when you think about the effect on your own marriage, that because obviously perhaps there hasn't been enough preparation on ground, there are not enough processes, there's a lot of intuition and stuff there, personalization, and therefore the rules change per day, and it's very, very high stress. And this is a situation that I'm sure you will come across where if the father had been your client, where the client is the problem, okay? So sometimes it happens that way, and you have to be of course, you have to be diplomatic about that. But the truth is that there's setting for the situation, there's setting in the family business, a lot of things are not right. So the question is the father ready to put in processes? Is he ready to put in processes? Is he ready to go through a reworking of the existing system? And I think those are the prerequisites for involvement in the business. That's what I would think.
I think I agree with you on that. If the patriarch is not ready, if the founder is not ready, nothing is going to happen. Except the founder is ready, nothing is going to happen. Except the child is willing to also push the conversation forward. I would like to come back, you see this person is about to leave, sometimes even if the founder is not ready, it takes the children to sit with them and have a conversation. You are about to lose us all.
Yeah.
How are we going to move forward as a family?
Yeah.
We know what your intention was.
Yes.
We would like to carry out your intention. So help us help you. So tell me what it is we need to do, or, and also getting professional help is very
Yes,
important.
absolutely.
Because there are some people who will not take information from their children because of the, it's not you yesterday, you were in primary. However, if you bring in somebody who is a trained professional, they may be able to find a way around what, you as the child could not break through. So bring in a professional, have the discussion, use friends around the parents to maybe, talk to the parents. It's time that we change. It's time that we pivot, But I think that they have to come to that realization for themselves with help from the family or professionals that, you are about to, lose what you've built.
Yes.
So do something about it. And I think that would be helpful.
Brilliant. I hope you find that helpful. And with this, I believe we've come to the final segment. And I would like to ask our guests for their parting thoughts. But before that, as they think about this, if there's any question that we've not been able to cover, our team will be in the chat section attempting to answer your questions. But if you would like a deeper consultation, you would like to speak to us about the peculiar situations, like Yobo has just said, there's something about a third party, a professional that can bring a different approach and hopefully help to steer conversations in the right direction. We'll be happy to reach out to you and to schedule something at your convenient time. The second poll question is up, so please answer that if you haven't. And so, final thoughts, starting with you, Mr. Konde.
I think that one of my beliefs and what drives me in this business and excites me is because I have a firm belief in the family as a state, the family as a nation. If you look biblically, for those who are Christians, nations came out of families. And therefore, I really believe that the future of Nigeria and of any country will be tied to the prosperity of families that, have structure, know what to do. Because if you look at America, you look at JP Morgan, you look at Rockefellers, you look at all these families, they actually took America into the 21st century. And so it's so important for the nation that we recognize the primary position that what I call the family state occupies. And the members of the family understand how important their families are to the way not only this nation, but the world develops. Because sometimes we think the future is out there, but the future is actually within the family. And the family can become so much more greater and a great contributor. So I think that the whole concept of the family office is the birthing of family nations and family states. And I think that for every family, patriarch, matriarch, and member, they need to take themselves seriously. And I think that's what I would.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Yobo?
I think for me, because of experience, I would like to speak to the founders of businesses as a child of a founder. It's very important for you to pay attention to your children and pay attention to what it is you would like them to become in the future. You have to be intentional from day zero. It's not day one, day zero, on how you want to talk to them. You want them to be able to talk to you. Communication is the bedrock of any family. Communication is the bedrock of any family business. And if you're not able to have a strong relationship with your children and hold the unit together with your family values, with your family, the structure that you build behind your family, there is no way that it's going to also translate into the business. Because like we said here, there is no business without the family. It's called a family business for a reason. What sprouted the business was the family. So you must make sure that, that unit stays strong. Communicate. Let it be a two-way street, not just an information session. This is what I want to do. This is how we're going to do it. But explain the why. This is why we are doing things like that. What is your opinion and, where do you stand? training for the next generation is also very important. They don't have to start in the business. They can come in and work for somebody else and also bring new ideas into the company. Be flexible. Don't make it's my way or the highway. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of fathers and mothers make. It's either my way or the highway. Be flexible. At the end of the day, they are your children. If the family is built on love, if the family is built on, faith, whatever it is you believe in, but those beliefs must be strong and transcend. And those are the things that would transcend individual gain. It now becomes about the collective. So that's
Fantastic.
My closing comment.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a brilliant time. I feel like there's nothing else to add. We've heard from the expert, we've heard from someone who is walking the talk. There is more to your family's wealth journey than the financial assets. The financial assets are an enabler of sorts. They are like a tool. You can't focus on the tool and leave the building to dilapidate. And so you need to begin to prioritize the intangible assets of your family. You need to begin to strategize for them as though the same way you do for your business, the way you are planning how you will make money. You want to be thinking of how you will develop the human capital within your family. You want to be planning, setting goals, reviewing those goals on how you will build the intellectual capital, the values within your family. And not just what you say the values are, like Mr. Konde has said in the past, is the acted out values. And so you can't call something your values and your action is in complete disalignment with that, because what your real value is what you do, not what you say. We can say it from now till eternity. If we're living out something completely different, that is what will stick, because that's the reality. And so you want to be planning around how you will be deliberate about developing the right values that are needed for the future. And then when all of that is in good stead, then the financial assets can energize them. Then the financial assets can be built and can be preserved in the long term. It has been such a great session. I mean, I am just so blown away, and I want to especially thank our guests, Mr. Konde and Mrs. Iyobo Ini, for sharing of your wisdom, sharing of your experience. We really do appreciate it. And for those that perhaps missed a part of this session or you were not able to catch most of it, do not fret. We will have this up on our YouTube channel, Meristem Nigeria. So please look out for that. And so, like I said before, at the Meristem Family Office, we echo Mr. Konde's sentiment, where we understand the power of family and how the various forms of capital must be harnessed for the family to reach its full potential. And so if you have more questions, perhaps your questions have not been dealt with in detail, or you would like support on your wealth journey and how this conversation can translate to action for you, we invite you to schedule a complimentary consultation with our team. We'll have the link up there in the chat box, and we will reach out to you once we get your details. And on that note, we come to the end of today's webinar, brought to you by the Meristem Family Office. Thank you again for joining us, and we wish you every success as you build a legacy that truly matters. Bye for now.
As a visionary leader, you've built an empire, a testament to your hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. But now, a burning question keeps you awake at night. What will become of your labor when you are no longer here to guide it? Imagine a future where your success story continues to unfold, generation after generation, where your wealth becomes a catalyst for greatness, guiding your descendants to new heights. I want you to picture a world where your children and grandchildren step into their roles as custodians of your legacy, armed with the knowledge, values, and resources required to navigate the complexities of wealth. And here's the beauty of it all. Your success not only provides financial security, but also the power to create profound change in the world. It becomes a force for good, touching lives and leaving your mark on society. This is why the Meristem Family Office exists, to ensure the seamless transfer of your wealth and wisdom across generations. We empower families like yours, guiding them through the intricacies of wealth management in all its forms. As your partner, your peace becomes our driving force. Let us build a future where your family's prosperity and impact last for generations. Take the first step today and let us begin the journey together. As a visionary leader, you've built an empire, a testament to your hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. But now, a burning question keeps you awake at night. What will become of your labor when you are no longer here to guide it? Imagine a future where your success story continues to unfold, generation after generation, where your wealth becomes a catalyst for greatness, guiding your descendants to new heights. I want you to picture a world where your children and grandchildren step into their roles as custodians of your legacy, armed with the knowledge, values, and resources required to navigate the complexities of wealth. And here's the beauty of it all. Your success not only provides financial security, but also the power to create profound change in the world. It becomes a force for good, touching lives and leaving your mark on society. This is why the Meristem Family Office exists, to ensure the seamless transfer of your wealth and wisdom across generations. We empower families like yours, guiding them through the intricacies of wealth management in all its forms. As your partner, your peace becomes our driving force. Let us build a future where your family's prosperity and impact last for generations. Take the first step today and let us begin the journey together.